श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सर्वनिर्गुणाथानुतं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं प्रद्युम्नसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादां सर्वललिता श्रीशाखान्तांश्च नमामि विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपरिष्ठाय श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणि प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यादिपाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे सर्वशास्त्राधिपीयूष सर्ववेदिक सत्फल सर्वसिद्धांत रत्नाढ्य सर्वलोकैक प्रद सर्वभागवत पुराण श्रीमद्भागवत प्रभो कलिध्वान क्रोधिकादित्य श्री कृष्ण परिवर्तित परमानंद पाठाय प्रेमवर्षक्षरायते सर्वदा सर्वसेव्या श्री कृष्ण नमस्तुमे मदेक बंधो मत्संगी मद्गुरु मन महाधना मन निस्तारक मन भाग्य मद आनंद नमस्ते असाधु साधुतागायीन मतिनीचोक्षताकर आनमंचकराशन माम प्रेमणा प्रत्कंठयोस्पुर ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते देवाय. Okay, resuming from 3.26.18 purport. Here this is stated that within the heart, the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides as a super soul. This situation is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. The super soul rests beside the individual soul and acts as a witness. This is also confirmed elsewhere in the Vedic literature. Two birds are sitting on the same tree of the body. One is witnessing and the other is eating the fruits of the tree. This Purusha or Paramatma who resides within the body of the individual soul is described in Bhagavad Gita 13.23 as the Upadrashta, the witness, and the Anumanta, sanctioning authority. The conditioned soul engages in the happiness and distress of the particular body given him by the arrangement of the external energy of the Supreme Lord. But the Supreme Living Being or the Paramatma is different from the conditioned soul. Upadrashta Anumanta cha Bhakta Bhokta Maheshwara Paramatme Kichap Yukto Dehesmin Purusha Paraha, someone else. He is described in Bhagavad Gita as Maheshwara or the Supreme Lord. He is Paramatma, not Jivatma. Paramatmeti Chapyuktaha. He is also referred to as Paramatma, not Jivatma. Paramatma means the super soul who is sitting by the side of the conditioned soul just to sanction his activities. The conditioned soul comes to this material world in order to lord it over material nature. Since one cannot do anything without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, he lives with the Jiva soul as witness and sanction giver. He is also Bhukta. He gives maintenance and sustenance to the conditioned soul. Since the living entity is constitutionally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of God, and the Lord is very affectionate to the living entities. Unfortunately, when the living entity is bewildered or illusioned by the external energy, he becomes forgetful of his eternal relationship with the Lord. But as soon as he becomes aware of his constitutional position, he is liberated. The minute independence of the conditioned soul is exhibited by his marginal position. If he likes, he can forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead and come into the material existence with a false ego to lord it over material nature. But if he likes, he can turn his face to the service of the Lord. The individual living entity is given that independence. His conditional life is ended and his life becomes successful as soon as he turns his face to the Lord. But by misusing his independence, he enters into material existence. Yet the Lord is so kind that as super soul, he always remains with the conditioned soul. The concern of the Lord is neither to enjoy nor to suffer from the material body. He remains with the Jiva simply as sanction giver and witness, so that the living entity can receive the results of his activities. Good or bad. Outside the body of the conditioned soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as the time factor. According to the Sankhya system of philosophy, there are 25 elements. The 24 elements already described, plus the time factor makes 25. According to some learned philosophers, the super soul is included a total of 26 elements. Here. 19. Okay, there's a question here.
Prabhu, do Do we need Lord's sanction and everything? Like, is it not possible for Lord to put things in auto mode? He need not sanction things every time.
He is all powerful. So him doing these kind of routine works is the equivalent of an autopilot mode only. But he needs to be
Okay.
there. That is the point. The point is the Jivatma requires the Lord, both in the liberated state and in the conditioned state.
Okay.
We are
So we can't
ever,
do without
we
him.
are, yeah, we are ever dependent on the Lord, even in the state of full liberation. What to speak of the stage of full conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, bro.
19. दैवात् शुभितधर्मिण्यां यस्यां योनौ परः पुमान् आधत्तवीर्यं सासूत महत्तत्त्वं हिरण्मयम्. After the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates material nature with its internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiranmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destinations of the conditioned souls. इदानीं तत्त्वेषु लक्षयितव्येषु प्रथमं चित्तस्य उत्पत्तिपूर्वकं लक्षणमाह. Now that the various elements are meant to be individually defined, first of all, he states the definition of chitta after describing how it is generated. Daivat, kalat, daivat indicates that the qualities of material nature, the modes of material nature are agitated by the force of time. Kala, shubhita, dharma, gunaha, yasyaha, tasyam yonav, abhivyakti sthane. Here, yonav, in the womb or in material nature, refers to the place where the world is going to be manifested to the conditioned souls. Viryam, chikchatyakyam chaitanyam. Viryam, semen, is internal potency. Here refers to his spiritual potency, consciousness. Impregnates material nature with his internal potency, impregnates with consciousness. Sa prakriti mahattattva asuta. Then that prakriti gives birth to mahattattva. Hiranmayam prakasha bahulam. And it is referred to as Hiranmaya. Hiranmaya literally means golden, which indicates that it is primarily filled with awareness. Now, the impregnation of material nature is described in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, verse 3. Material nature's primal factor is the Mahatattva, or breeding source of all varieties. This part of material nature, which is called Pradhana, as well as Brahman, is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and delivers varieties of living entities. Material nature in this connection is called Brahman because it is a perverted reflection of the spiritual nature. It is described in the Vishnu Purana that the living entities belong to the spiritual nature. The potency of the Supreme Lord is spiritual, and the living entities, although they are called marginal potency, are also spiritual. If the living entities were not spiritual, this description of impregnation by the Supreme Lord would not be applicable. The Supreme Lord does not put his semen into that which is not spiritual. But it's stated here that the Supreme Person puts his semen into material nature. This means that the living entities are spiritual by nature. After impregnation, material nature delivers all kinds of living entities, beginning from the greatest living creature, Lord Brahma, down to the insignificant ant in all varieties of form. In Bhagavad Gita 14.4, material nature is clearly mentioned as Sarva Yonishu. Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya Sambhava Murtayanti. Yeah, Tasam Brahma Mahadyoneraham Bija Pradapita. This means that of all varieties of species, demigods, human beings, animals, birds, and beasts, whatever is manifested, material nature is the mother, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the seed-giving father. Generally, it is experienced that the father gives life to the child, but the mother gives its body. Although the seed of life is given by the father, the body develops within the womb of the mother. Similarly, the spiritual living entities are impregnated into the womb of material nature, But the body being supplied by material nature takes on many different species and forms of life. The theory that this life are manifest by the interaction of the 24 material elements is not supported here. The living force comes directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is completely spiritual. Therefore, no material scientific advancement can produce life. The living force comes from the spiritual world and has nothing to do with the interaction of the material elements. Questions? Gauranga Prabhu.
Oh, what is that semen here mentioning that Lord produces a semen, then the living entity takes birth? I don't understand.
No, he glances at material nature. So when he glances at material nature, then at that time the living entities are injected inside. So this is often compared to a man injecting a semen into his wife's womb. The idea is that he is the father and material nature is the mother. So therefore these expressions are commonly found in original Sanskrit also and in translations also. That is the idea. Okay. Mohan Radhapati Prabhu has a question. Who has a question here?
Prabhu, in this context only, Srila Prabhupada is writing that Supreme Lord does not put his semen into that which is not spiritual, but it is stated here that the Supreme Person puts his semen into material nature. So this seems contradictory. He does not put in spirit in non-spiritual thing, but he is putting it in material nature, which is not spiritual actually.
See, material nature by itself is dead matter. But because someone takes charge of it, it is a reflection of spiritual nature. In a certain sense, you can say that it is fit to accommodate the living entities, and in that sense, it can be said to be spiritual. It is not, you cannot say that. See, you should distinguish between material nature when it is ready to accommodate the living entities and material nature when it is not ready to accommodate the living entities. So when it is ready to accommodate the living entities, it is not wrong to refer to it as being spiritual in some way. So he prepares it. He prepares material nature. And it is not absolutely dead matter. It is matter presided by a reflection of the internal potency. In fact, in Madhvacharya's writings, he directly says that Lakshmi is in charge of material nature. Directly he says the presiding deity of material nature is Lakshmi. Mahalakshmi. And then you have Narayana and you have Lakshmi here. So Narayana is dealing with Lakshmi. This is how they explain. He explains it like this only. So from the perspective of the presiding deity, it is spiritual.
Oh.
We can say in an indirect sense only, not in a direct sense.
If we consider Durga Devi, she is also spiritual, no, bro? If we take her as presiding.
Lord Narayana reflects himself into Lord Shiva, and Lakshmi reflects herself into Parvati. Durga is another form of Parvati.
Okay, bro.
Prabhu, when Parvati is there already to take care about this material nature, then why again that Durga form is again expanded?
Different forms of the demigods, demigoddesses are meant for different purposes. These things are found in the Puranas. Why she assumed the form of Durga, why she assumed the form of Kali, and so on. Okay, let's move on. 20. Vishwamatmagatam Vyanjan Utastho Jagadam Swat-tejasa pipat tivram atma prasvapanam tamaha. Thus, after manifesting variegatedness, the effulgent Mahatattva, which contains all the universes within itself, which is the root of all cosmic manifestations and which is not destroyed at the time of annihilation, swallows the darkness that covered the effulgence at the time of dissolution. Vishwam, Ahankara Adi Prapancham. So the universe here refers to the element of false ego and so on, all of that put together. The totality of the various elements, beginning with the element of false ego. Atmagatam, contained within itself. Swasmin Sukshma Rupena Sthitam Vyanjayan Prakatayan. It reveals the subtle varieties present inside it. Sarvatra Pumstvam Tattva Pada Tyagena Mahaniti Etasyaiva Vishishikritatva. That's a grammatical note. Utastaha Manovat Laya Vikshepa Shun. What is this? Wait. What is it? Verse 20 and 20. Manovat Laya Vikshepa Shunyaha. Atmanam Praswapayati Tatha Yattamaha Purupalaya Samaye Mahantam Prakritau Vilapayamasa. Ityarthaha. Okay, wait. This is, let me read out the Anvaya. Vishwamatmagata, correct. Utastaha Laya Vikshepa Shunyaha Jagadankuraha Jagataha Ankura Karana Sthaniyaha Mahan Atmagatam Swasmin Sukshma Rupena Sthitam Vishwam Ahankaradi Prapancham Vyanjam should be Vyanjan Vyanjayan Prakatayan Ivram Malaya Kalinam Atma Praswapanam Atmanam Praswapayati Prakshadayati Iti Tamaha Swatejasa Apibat Nashitavan Ityarthaha. See, this Mahatattva, it is considered to be the seed of the universe, of Jagat. Jagat refers to the variegated world that we experience, that we can experience as conditioned souls. Here we are talking about the background. Here we are talking about the background. The background are all these elements and all that. So this Mahatattva, that is the seed of, or the root of all cosmic manifestations. And it is devoid of agitation, nor can things be merged into it. So it is said to be Kutastha, unchangeable. Unchangeable. So it reveals the Vishwa, the universe, which is contained within it. Now here, what is this universe? The universe refers to the totality of the various products of matter, beginning with false ego. They're all initially subtly present within it, but now they are coming out and they are all revealed one by one. So by its own force, it destroys, that is what is referred to here as swallows. It destroys the darkness that had covered it up at the time of dissolution. It had completely taken over. The darkness had taken over. But now that darkness is now destroyed. Atmanam praswapayati tatha yattamaha purva pralaya samaye mahantam prakrita vilapayamasa. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ever existing, all blissful and full of knowledge, its different energies are also ever existing in the dormant stage. Thus, when the Mahatattva was created, it manifested the material ego and swallowed up the darkness which covered the cosmic manifestation at the time of dissolution. This idea can be further explained. A person at night remains inactive, covered by the darkness of night. But when he is awakened in the morning, the covering of night or the forgetfulness of the sleeping state disappears. Similarly, when the Mahatattva appears after the night of dissolution, the effulgence is manifested to exhibit the variegatedness of this material world. 21. Yes.
So the darkness was swallowed up by Mahat Tattva. It means that by the spirit souls within it, or by matter, because matter is actually dark. As we say that the tamasima jyotirgama. So material world is dark. Material universes are dark.
No, but now see, this is the next step now. See, this is the next step. Before that, sir, the Lord has injected the living entities. That is why she gives birth to Mahatattva, no?
Yes, so living entities are there in that. That's why the darkness got swallowed up.
Yeah, that is why all these expressions are found.
Yes, yes, true. Okay.
Okay. 21. Yatat sattvagunam swachham shantam bhagavatah padam yadahur vasudevahyam chittam tan mahadatmakam. The mode of goodness, which is clear, sober status of understanding the personality of God, which is generally called Vasudeva or consciousness, becomes manifest in the Mahat Tattva. Yattat prasiddham chittam tat mahadatmakam mahatattvameva dehe chittarupena tishtati ityartha. That which is well known as chitta, that is actually the Mahat or Mahatattva. In other words, the Mahatattva itself is found within the body in the form of the chitta. Swachham, nirmalam, shantam, raga adi shunyam, bhagavatah padam, upasana pitham, yad yam bhagavantam vasudevakya mahuriti chittahankara buddhi manavsu kramena vasudeva sankarshana pradyumna niruddhaha upasya devataha chitta adishuddhyartham yeyaha. This chitta is clear, spotless. It is shantam, it is sober, which means these are all in the originally chitta is like this. It is devoid of attraction, repulsion, and so on. And it is the platform on which one worships Bhagavan. Which form of Bhagavan? The form of Bhagavan known as Vasudeva. That form that the learned authorities refer to as Vasudeva. So it should be understood that Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, these Vishnu Tattva forms, these are the worshipable deities on the Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas, respectively. That means one should meditate on Lord Vasudeva as the overall supreme controller of Chitta, and as Sankarshana as the supreme controller of Ahankara, Pradyumna as a supreme controller of Buddhi, Aniruddha as a supreme controller of Manas. This is for the purpose of purifying Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas. Vishnu, Rudra, Brahma, Chandrahatu, Adhishtataraha. But the immediate residing deities of these four, Chitta, Ahankara, Buddhi, and Manas, are Vishnu, Rudra, Brahma, and Chandra, respectively. The Vasudeva manifestation or the status of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called pure goodness. No, it's a mistake here. The Vasudeva. This should be with a short. The Vasudeva manifestation or the status of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called pure goodness or Shuddha Sattva. In the Shuddha Sattva status, there is no infringement of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. In the Vedic literature, there is mention of the Lord's expansion as the four personalities of Godhead: Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Here, in the reappearance of the Mahattattva, the four expansions of Godhead occur. He who is seated within as Super Soul expands first as Vasudeva. Again, the Vasudeva stage. This is not Vasudeva. The Vasudeva stage is free from infringement by material desires and is a status in which one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the object which is described in Bhagavad Gita as Adhuta. Looks like there's a transcription error here. This is another feature of the Mahatattva. The Vasudeva expansion should be. It's also called Krishna consciousness, for it is free from all tinges of material passion and ignorance. This clear state of understanding helps one to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vasudeva status, not Vasudeva, the Vasudeva status is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as Kshetrajya. What is this? I think there's some mix-up in the transcription here. The original could have been something like this. Vasudeva is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as Kshetrajya, which refers to the knower of the field of activities as well as the superknower. The living being who has occupied a particular type of body knows that body, but the superknower Vasudeva knows not only a particular type of body, but also the field of activities and all the different varieties of bodies. In order to be situated in clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one must worship Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna alone. When Krishna or Vishnu is alone without the accompaniment of his internal energy, he is Vasudeva. When he is accompanied by his internal potency, he is called Dwarakadhish. This is all Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. To have clear consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one has to worship Vasudeva. It is also explained in Bhagavad Gita that after many births, one surrenders to Vasudeva. Vasudeva Sarvamati. Such a great soul is very rare. In order to get released from the false ego, one has to worship Sankarshana. Sankarshana is also worshipped through Lord Shiva. The snakes which cover the body of Lord Shiva are representations of Sankarshana. And Lord Shiva is always absorbed in meditation upon Sankarshana. One who is actually a worshipper of Lord Shiva, as a devotee of Sankarshana, can be released from false material ego. If one wants to get free from mental disturbances, one has to worship Aniruddha. For this purpose, worship of the moon planet is also recommended in the Vedic literature. Similarly, to be fixed in one's intelligence, one has to worship Pradyumna, who is reached through the worship of Brahma. These matters are explained in Vedic literature. Yes. Wait. Either Mohan Radhapati Prabhu or Chitana Prabhu have a question.
Hare Krishna, bro. Prabhu, yeah, when it is described that we have to worship Vasudeva, so Vasudeva is without his accompaniment of his internal energy. But we are taught that Lord is never without his energy or his devotees. So is it possible even to worship Vasudeva?
Yes, this is the beginning. This is the beginning for those in the slow track. They are trained to worship like this.
Okay.
Okay. There was another question. Who had a question? Somapati Gauranga Prabhu has a question.
So, Prabhu, here as Prabhupada explains that we need to worship different incarnations like Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Anuruddha. Is it
Expansion.
specifically recommended to worship?
Expansion, not incarnations. Expansions.
Yes.
Mm.
So, do we need to worship them?
That option is there. So just give these options.
So, chanting Hare Krishna itself is also sufficient, right?
Yeah, of course. If one cannot chant constantly, then you can chant Hare Krishna, and there's so many other options given now. That is why so many options are there. So many options are there because people cannot chant constantly, no? That is why so many different options are there. 64 items are there. Haribhakti Vilas gives even more items. Like that. All of these things are given for those who cannot engage. You know, we cannot chant. If you cannot chant like Haridas Thakur, there are so many other options are there. Okay.
In case if I want to pray for false ego, as mentioned here, to remove my false ego, to free from false ego, then I need to worship him.
Yes. See, that's what I said, no? Chittadi Shuddhyartham Gyaya. This is for purification. And this is
So,
very beautifully explained. It actually means to get released from this. Purification means to get released from this.
so now worshipping means what is that again?
You're asking what is the process for worshipping this
Yeah,
particular form.
yeah, yeah.
That will be found in various scriptures which tell how to engage in worship of these Chaturvyahas. That will found that's in various scriptures it is mentioned.
Okay.
There are complex procedures, but at the very least, one can otherwise just chant Hare Krishna and pray to Vasudeva Sankarshan Pradyumna Aniruddha. That's all, At least do that. At least we can do that much.
So directly praying to Radha Madhav is not sufficient.
No, that is more than sufficient. But if you cannot do that, then there are so many other things.
Okay. So also regarding that Haridas Thakur chanting, so he was chanting the 3 lakh names per day. So when prostitute approached him, he also gives the holy name to her. So she also starts chanting 3 lakhs names per day immediately.
Okay,
so how is it possible?
how is it possible? It was possible. She was chanting. So what is your question?
But we are not able to chant like that.
But she surrendered to Haridas Thakur. We are not surrendering to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the same way. If we also surrender to Haridas Thakur, we will also get the ability to do it. Through his representatives, obviously. To surrender to Krishna.
But he there we see that he simply said that you give up everything and simply sit and chant.
She accepted it, no. She accepted it, no questions asked. We'll have hundreds of questions. We want to save the world. We want to save this one. We want to save that. So hundreds of things we want to do. Did she ask anything? She simply said yes, that's all. We are not as great as we imagine ourselves to be. We understand that over the decades. Okay, let's move on. Yeah?
How that surrenderness come in her when Haridas Thakur said at a time she accepted. So why we are not able to accept?
That you have to ask each and every individual living entity. Each individual living entity has to make the decision to surrender or not surrender. That is up to each soul. If you ask why was it easy for her and difficult for us, then that's a different question. That is a different question. Why was it easy for her? Because of previous Bhakti Sukriti. Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti. Therefore, it was easy for her. But you cannot say that that was the reason why she was able to do it. The reason why we progress in Krishna consciousness is because we, as each individual soul, we have to make the decision. That is called surrender, Shadanga Sharanagati. It is Atma Dharma, it is Jaiva Dharma, it is the Jivatma's decision. But what makes it easy, what makes it difficult, that is based on previous offenses. All these things are there. Sukriti that is favorable for advancement in pure devotional service. These things matter to when it comes to considerations of ease and difficulty. whether it's easy or whether it's difficult. For that, you have considerations of piety and impiety. But even if it is difficult, one who is determined, he will make spiritual progress. Even if he has zero sukriti, that is favorable to pure devotion service. If he is determined, he will move through it. Yes, he will go through a lot of difficulties, but he will succeed. He will succeed with difficulty. The one with those pious credits which are favorable for pure bhakti will progress with ease. The other will have to progress with difficulty. That's all. And Krishna will help both. Okay?
Yes, Prabhu, yes.
22. स्वच्छत्वम् अविकारित्वं शान्तत्वम् इति चेतसः वृत्तिभिर्लक्षणं प्रोक्तं यथा पां प्रकृतिः परा. After the manifestation of the Mahatattva, these features appear simultaneously. As water in its natural state before coming in contact with earth is clear, sweet, and unruffled, so the characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. Let me read out the Anvaya. Yatha para bhu samsargat praktani apam prakritihi phena taranga adi rahita avastha yatha. Just as water, just as the nature of water before it comes into contact with earth is devoid of bubbles, waves, and so on. Swachhatvam, Bhagavad Vigraha, no, Bhagavad Bimbagrahitvam, Avikaritvam, Laya Vikshepa Rahityam, Shantatvam, Ragadishunyatvam, iti, Evam Rupa Bhihi Vrittibhihi, Chetasaha, Chittasya, Lakshanam, Proktam. Similarly, Chitta is defined as having these features. It is clear. It is clear means it is capable of perceiving the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original form of the Supreme Lord, which is reflected in the form of Paramatma. So, originally, Chitta is capable of revealing that. It is also originally devoid of disturbances. It is also devoid of attractions and repulsions. Nano dehasthasya chittasya sarvatra swachhattvadi gunaha na upalabhyate. Question. The chitta is in the body, and you do not find everywhere that it has qualities of possessing clarity and so on. Answer. Swachhatvam bhagavad bimba grahitvam avikaritvam laya vikshepa rahityam shantasya ragadi rahityam iti lakshanam chetasah chetasya vrittibhihi swabhavikibhihi eva proktam. It is simply, Chitta is simply being defined as possessing these features. Yatha apam para prakriti utkrishta swabhava, just as the excellent nature of water. Tena khalo apaha swachhaha phena tarangadirahiraha madhuraha shantaha bhavanti. It is because of its original nature that it is clean. Originally, water is devoid of bubbles, waves, it is sweet, it is tranquil. Yathacha bhumi adi samsargat asvatshatvadi matyah bhavanti. Just as water, when it comes into contact with earth and so on, then it assumes a different set of qualities, like having bubbles, having waves, dirty, and so on. तथैव चित्तमपि दुर्विषये आसक्तं चेतना संसर्गात् अस्वच्छमपि भवति इति अर्थः. Similarly, the mind, when it is attached to sense objects, or when it is attached to inappropriate objects, then it also becomes unclean and so on. The pure status of consciousness or Krishna consciousness exists in the beginning. Just after creation, consciousness is not polluted. The more one becomes materially contaminated, however, the more consciousness becomes obscured. In pure consciousness, one can perceive a slight reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As in clear, unagitated water, free from impurities, one can see everything clearly. So in pure consciousness or Krishna consciousness, one can see things as they are. One can see the reflection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can see his own existence as well. This state of consciousness is very pleasing, transparent, and sober. In the beginning, consciousness is pure. 23 to 24. Yes.
No, this chitta, as we read in the last verse, that chitta is the mahatattva present in the body. So it is some, like, other than the components of subtle body, it is something different which is also there in the body, inside.
No, it is part of the subtle body. It is part of the subtle body.
So it's different from mind also, no, bro? Mind, intelligence, ego.
Yeah, chitta, ahankara, buddhi, manas. They are defined in different ways.
Oh. Bro, we primarily were told 3, now it became 4.
That is because Bhagavad Gita is an introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam.
In Shastakam also, the first sloka, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, when it comes, so it means this chitta.
Is it? That you'll have to examine the explanations by Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Song also, Chitta Darpan Parimarjan Kari, something like that. It was Chitta Darpan. So,
no, but I have the impression it is that is a reference to the chitta of the original soul, the spiritual chitta of the spiritual soul, not this material chitta. Of course, when that is clean, then this is cleaned also. That is also true.
Okay.
Okay. 23 to 24. Mahattattva vikurvana bhagavad-virya sambhavat kriyashaktir ahankaras trividha samapadyata vaikarikas taidishascha tamasascha yato bhavaha manasaschendriyanam cha bhutanam mahatamapi. The material ego springs up from the Mahattattva, which evolved from the Lord's own energy. The material ego is endowed predominantly with the active power of with the active power of 3 kinds: good, passionate, and ignorant. It is from these 3 types of material ego that the mind, the senses of perception, the organs of action, and the gross elements evolve. Is there any question here? What is the exact meaning of chitta? Consciousness can be a good translation. Material consciousness. I think Prabhupada translates it as contaminated consciousness. Okay, 23 to year what? Year 23, 24, 25 comes to 25. Okay, so let me read this purport and then afterwards we'll go back to this. Yes.
Prabhu, we were explained that Prabhupada says that consciousness is symptom of soul. So it is this chitta only.
No, it is not this. That is Dharmabhuta Jnana. That is the intrinsic energy of the living entity itself. That is spiritual. That is fully spiritual. This is a part of subtle.
So this material chitta will only function when there is spiritual chitta behind it.
Everything has its prototype originally. On the spiritual platform, in the kingdom of God, there is no... In the material world, we have a gross body, which is different from subtle body, which is different from the Jivatma. In the spiritual world, there is only the Jivatma. It's not that the Jivatma contains some other subtle body, and that contains some other, that is inside some other gross body. It's not like that. There it is different. But still we talk like that. Just as we talk about Krishna lifting the Govardhan hill with his hand, but his hand and himself are not different. So, like that, each living entity, his features are identical with himself in the spiritual world. Okay, let's examine this. Purport. In the beginning, from clear consciousness or the pure state of Krishna consciousness, the first contamination sprang up. This is called false ego, or identification of the body as self. The living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness, but he has marginal independence, and this allows him to forget Krishna. Originally, pure Krishna consciousness exists, but because of misuse of marginal independence, there's a chance of forgetting Krishna. This is exhibited in actual life. There are many instances in which someone acting in Krishna consciousness suddenly changes. In the Upanishads, it is therefore stated that the path of self-realization is just like the sharp edge of a razor. The example is very appropriate. One shaves his cheeks with a sharp razor very nicely, but as soon as his attention is diverted from the activity, he immediately cuts his cheek because he mishandles the razor. Not only must one come to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness, but one must also be very careful. Any inattentiveness or carelessness may cause fall down. This fall down is due to false ego. From the status of pure consciousness, the false ego is born because of misuse of independence. We cannot argue about why false ego arises from pure consciousness. Factually, there is always the chance that this will happen, and therefore one has to be very careful. False ego is the basic principle for all material activities which are executed in the modes of material nature. As soon as one deviates from pure Krishna consciousness, he increases his entanglement in material reaction. The entanglement of materialism is the material mind, and from this material mind, the senses and material organs become manifest. 25. Sahasrashirasam sakshadyam anantam prachakshate sankarshanakhyam purusham bhutendriya manomayam. The threefold ahankara, the source of the gross elements, the senses and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name of Sankarshana, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. Ahankarasya utpatti purvakam lakshanam aha mahatattvaditi. And then from text 23, the generation of ahankara and its defining characteristics are spelled out. Kriya Shakti, endowed with active power, is endowed predominantly with the active power of three kinds. Iti Upalakshanam. Jnana Kriya Dravyeshu api tasya Shaktimatva. Here, Kriya Shakti is a partial representation of a larger set of potencies. Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Dravya Shakti. अतः येभ्यः वैकारिकतैजसतामसेभ्यः मनः इन्द्रियभूतानां क्रमेण भवः उत्पत्तिः. And it is from them that you have the mind, the senses of perception, and the organs of action, the gross Mahabhutas, all of them, sequentially they come out. So false ego has different names, Vaikarika, Taijasa, Tamasa. So you have one by one, each of them comes out here. Actually, we should do like this. From Vaikarika, false ego, the mind comes along with deities, presiding deities. From Taijasa, Ahankara, and the senses come, Indriya. Then from Tamasa, Ahankara, the Bhutas or gross elements, they come. They are all generate. Tatra Upasya Devata Maha Sahasreti. And the worshipable deity in relation to the mind has been spelled out in text 25. Yammiti manchaha kroshanti iti nyayena yat stham iti artha. Now when it says that this false ego is Sankarshana, it means situated in this false ego as the presiding deity, as the overall presiding deity, supreme presiding deity, is Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. So this is like the standard Sanskrit idiom. The stage is crying. Now, when you perform a drama on a stage, and somebody cries, somebody plays a part of some character in a tragic scene, and that person cries, then idiomatically, sometimes it is said the stage is crying. So when you say the stage is crying, it doesn't mean that literally the stage is crying. So like that here, when it says that this ahankara is sankarshana, it doesn't literally mean that. It means Lord Sankarshana is present in ahankara and activating ahankara. He is the overall supreme presiding deity of ahankara. 26. Kartritvam, karanatvam cha, karyatvam cheti lakshanam, shantaghora vimuhatvam iti va syadahankritehe. This false ego is characterized as a doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull, according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, respectively. Kartritvam devata rupena, karanatvam indriya rupena, karyatvam bhuta rupena. So it is characterized as the doer in the form of the various demigods and demigoddesses who preside over it. It is the instrument in the form of the senses, and it is the effect in the form of the gross elements. Shantatpadikam trigunamayattvena is serene, active, or dull according to how it's influenced by the three modes of material nature. Ahankara or false ego is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of material affairs. So here when we're talking about ahankara, we're talking about the original, ahankara being an element, consider it to be something like a software. Okay. It is a part of see, just like when they make all these gaming environments, they have to create various, they have to introduce a law of gravity, they have to create a whole environment, then they have to create people with personalities who control and so on. You have to basically are duplicating a world. So this is something like that. So ahankara, when we are talking about here, it is not talking of the one individual living in conditioned soul's ahankara. You're talking of ahankara, the stock ahankara. It's like we hear about the universal coverings, and ahankara is one of those coverings. So we're talking of that, the element of ahankara. Ahankara or false ego is transformed into the demigods, the controlling directors of material affairs. These are all posts which are occupied by conscious living beings, but these posts are all products of the element of false ego by the arrangement of Lord Vishnu. As an instrument, the false ego is represented as different senses and sense organs. And as a result of the combination of the demigods and the senses, material objects are produced. So the material objects are referred to gross material objects, which are made from the gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. In the material world, we are producing so many things, and this is called advancement of civilization. But factually, the advancement of civilization is a manifestation of the false ego. By false ego, all material things are produced as objects of enjoyment. One has to cease increasing artificial necessities in the form of material objects. One great Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, has lamented that when one deviates from the pure consciousness of Vasudeva, it can be Vasudeva also, or Krishna consciousness, he becomes entangled in material activities. The exact words he uses are Satsanga chhadi, koino asate vilas, tekarame lagiloje, karma bantha fas. I've given up the pure status of consciousness because I wanted to enjoy in the temporary material manifestation. Therefore, I've been entangled in the network of actions and reactions. सत्संग छाड़ दिया कोई नो असत्य विलास बेकार है नहीं लागे लोजे कर्म बंध फाम तो all comes in प्रार्थना 27 वैकारिका विकुर्वाणां मनस्तत्त्वमजायत यत् संकल्प विकल्पाभ्यां वर्तते कामसंभवः. From the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. यद् यतः मनसः संकल्पः सामान्यतः विषय जिघृक्षा सामान्य विषयस्य एव विविधसंकल्पनेन विशेषतः जिघृक्षा विकल्पस्य ताभ्यां कामस्य मनोरथस्य संभवः भवति. Whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. So from the mind, we develop sankalpa and vikalpa. Sankalpa refers to thoughts. Vikalpa refers to reflections here in this context. So sankalpa refers to the generic desire to literally grasp the sense objects. That means the generic desire to enjoy sense objects. And then when one contemplates further on and on in general about sense enjoyment, then one desires to grasp specific sense objects, vikalpa. Because only then there is a possibility of fulfilling the cherished desires, kama sambhavaha. The symptoms of the mind are determination and rejection. Prabhupada has interpreted sankalpa vikalpa as determination and rejection, which is also found in the scriptures. This explanation of Vishnu Chakravarti, you find it here. Srila Swami was also saying this. Sankalpaha chintanam, vikalpaha vishesha chintanam. Manasaha utpatti purvakam lakshanamaha. Srila Swami is now written this is a description of how manas is generated along with its identifying characteristics. The symptoms of the mind are determination and rejection, which are due to different kinds of desires. We desire that which is favorable to our sense gratification, and we reject that which is not favorable to sense gratification. The material mind is not fixed, but the very same mind can be fixed when engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, as long as the mind is on the material platform, it is hovering. And all this rejection and acceptance is asat, temporary. It is stated that he whose mind is not fixed in Krishna consciousness must hover between acceptance and rejection. However advanced a man is in academic qualifications, as long as he is not fixed in Krishna consciousness, he will simply accept and reject and will never be able to fix his mind on a particular subject matter. This is the reference to that 5th canto verse. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvair gunaistatra samasate surah harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorathena sati dhavato bhakih. 28. Yad vidur hyanuruddhahyam rishikānām athīśvaram शारदेन्दि varashyamam samradhyam yogivishanai. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is formed slowly by the yogis. So here, Vishnu Chakravarti says, yat stham. That mind is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha means Lord Aniruddha is present in the mind of the living entity. Same example. The stage is crying. The system of yoga entails controlling the mind, and the Lord of the mind is Aniruddha. Okay. The system of yoga entails controlling the mind, and the Lord of the mind is Aniruddha. It is stated that Aniruddha is four-handed with Sudarshan Chakra, conch shell, club, and lotus flower. There are 24 forms of Vishnu, each differently named. Among these 24 forms, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva are depicted very nicely in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it is stated that Aniruddha is worshipped by the yogis. Okay, what verse is this? This is 28. Okay, fine. Meditation upon voidness is a modern invention of the fertile brain of some speculator. Actually, the process of yoga meditation, as prescribed in this verse, should be fixed upon the form of Aniruddha. By meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from the agitation of acceptance and rejection. So, if one wants to become free from Sankalpa Vikalpa, then one should meditate on Lord Aniruddha. That is the point. Same way, if one wants to be freed from the effects of Ahankara, then one should pray to the supreme presiding deity of Ahankara. Same thing for Chitta also. When one's mind is fixed upon Aniruddha, one gradually becomes God realized. He approaches the pure status of Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of yoga. 29. Taijasa tu vikurvanad buddhitattvam abhut sati. Dravyas pranavijnanam indriyanam anugraha. By transformation of the false ego and passion, intelligence takes birth. O virtuous lady, the functions of intelligence are to help in ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view and to help the senses. Now this is Buddhir Utpatti Purvakam Lakshanama. Swami says. Here he talks about how Buddhi was generated and the identifying characteristics of Buddhi. Question?
Prabhu, this Sankalpa and Vikalpa, which is happening in mind, an outsider or a non-devotee may ask that what is the problem? If I am satisfying my desires, I may accept sense objects, I may reject them. Ultimately, I am fulfilling my material desires. So where is the problem in this? If he may ask like this.
Now the same thing that he liked yesterday, he will dislike today. So yesterday I liked to pay taxes. Today I don't like to pay taxes. How can you have a sane life like that? How can you say, yesterday I liked my child, today I hate my child? How can you say, yesterday I like to study for my classes and today I don't like to study for my classes? It is a problem. Problems should be recognized as problems.
And Prabhu, another question is regarding this, when this false ego is described, Sri Narottam Das Thakur was quoted, and Prabhupada is writing that because I wanted to enjoy in temporary material manifestation. So this misuse of independence or this desire to misuse this free will, it comes in some standard format that every conditioned soul thought in this way, or this particular desire came in his mind and that's why he is here. Or there are variations also in that.
Might be variation. Living entities are individual. When one desires that I will serve Krishna in material existence, that's when it all begins.
So when it is said, sometimes you mentioned once that it's not exactly completely rebel, like initially we wanted to serve only. So this element of controlling, how it enters, that I want to control
because I'm making the decision where I want to serve.
Okay. And element of enjoyment?
Again, it's the same thing. Enjoyment on the basis of control, no. If you take enjoyment to be experience of happiness, then the ones in the spiritual world, they're much more enjoying, but they don't have it. They don't. They don't desire to enjoy even Krishna consciousness the way they want. They want to serve Krishna the way it is pleasing to Krishna. Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. द्रव्य स्फुरण रूपम विज्ञानमिति चित्त व्यावृत्त्यर्थम. Here, interesting expression. Dravya Spurna Vijnanam. Dravya Spurna Vijnanam refers to ascertaining the nature of objects when they come into view. This is a characteristic of buddhi, intelligence. Now, this distinguishes it from chitta. Chetana rupam vijnanam to chitta dharma. One should understand that it is the nature of chitta to exhibit chetana, consciousness. It transmits consciousness directly, chitta. Whereas indriya, this buddhi, it is not of this nature. It helps us understand the nature of objects when they come within our radar, you can say. There are different scope. We have the knowledge acquiring senses, jnanendriyas, and each of them have their gocharas. Each of them have their scope. For instance, something comes within my earshot, something within my range of hearing, something comes within my range of vision, something comes within my touch sensation, and so on. So then intelligence helps in ascertaining the nature of this. So it's of a different type of awareness. Call it intellectual awareness of objects which have come into your zone of awareness. Indriyanam anugraha iti buddhya vina panchendriyana na pravartitum shaknuvanti iti arthaha. Another feature of buddhi is it is an assistant to the indriyas. It helps the senses. From this, it is understood that without buddhi, the five senses cannot function. यद्यपि चित्त अहंकार मनांसी अपि इंद्रिय अनुग्राहकानि तदपि बुद्धिया तद अनुग्रह विशेषज्ञेयः. Even though the chitta, ahankara and manas also help the indriyas, the senses, still the buddhi provides special help for the senses. तथा हि शब्दं शृणोमि इति अत्र प्रथमं चित्तेन चेतना मात्रं निधीयते. So then he gives an example. I hear some sound. So here, first of all, through chitta, I am simply aware in general, a general awareness. Buddhya shabdoyam iti spurtihi. Then from intelligence comes the awareness that this is articulated speech. Manasa shabde jigriksha. Then from the mind, there is now a contemplation of an attempt to understand that sound. Ahankarani tatra swa abhimana arpanam. And then through ahankara, there is identification with oneself as being someone who has to do something with that, what he has heard. Now, keep in mind that all of this is already programmed, and it is the nature of that programming that is being taught to us here. We are in a programmed environment, and it is very important to know this. Okay. Fine. Intelligence is the discriminating power to understand an object, and it helps the senses make choices. Therefore, intelligence is supposed to be the master of the senses. Perfection of intelligence is attained when one becomes fixed in the activities of Krishna consciousness. By the proper use of intelligence, one's consciousness is expanded, and the ultimate expansion of consciousness is Krishna consciousness. 30. संशयोऽथ विपर्यास निश्चय स्मृतिरेव च स्वाप इत्युच्यते बुद्धेर् लक्षणं वृत्तितः पृथक्. Doubt, misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory and sleep as determined by their different functions are said to be the distinct characteristics of intelligence. द्रव्यस्फुरणस्य एव प्रपञ्चः विपर्यासः. Okay. द्रव्यस्फुरणस्य एव प्रपञ्चः संशयादिः. Okay. There should be. Okay. Now here there is a further description about how awareness comes when objects enter into the range of one's senses. Viparyasah, misapprehension, mithya jnanam, nishchayah, pramana jnanam. Nishchaya refers to authoritative apprehension or correct apprehension. Swapaha nidra, sleep. Pramana viparye vikalpa nidra smrutayah iti patanjala uktehe. This explanation is correctly based on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where all of this comes then. Yes.
Prabhu, I missed that point. When you said, why you mentioned that point that we are living in a controlled environment and it's important to know. I missed the reason why.
Because it's already programmed that there are certain things which you will like, certain things you will not like. All these things are already worked out. There is a generic script behind how conditioned souls are caught within material existence and punished. So it is useful to know. This is how, the intelligence will tell this, the mind will tell this, the body will do this. All of these things are already worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Doubt is one of the important functions of intelligence. Blind acceptance of something does not give evidence of intelligence. Therefore, the word samshaya is very important. In order to cultivate intelligence, one should be doubtful in the beginning. But doubting is not very favorable when information is received from the proper source. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that doubting the words of the authority is the cause of destruction. Samshayatma vinashyati, as described in the Patanjali Yoga system, Pramana Viparya Vikalpa Nidra Smritayaha, Smritayaha. By intelligence only, one can understand things as they are. By intelligence only, can one understand whether or not is the body. The study to determine whether one's identity is spiritual or material begins in doubt. When one is able to analyze his actual position, the false identification with the body is detected. This is called viparyasa. This false identification is called viparyasa. When false identification is detected, then real identification can be understood. Real understanding is described here as nishchayaha, or proved experimental knowledge. This experimental knowledge can be achieved when one has understood the false knowledge. By experimental or proved knowledge, one can understand that he is not the body, but spirit soul. Smriti means memory, and swapa means sleep. Sleep is also necessary to keep the intelligence in working order. If there is no sleep, the brain cannot work nicely. In Bhagavad Gita, it is especially mentioned that persons who regulated eating, sleeping, and other necessities of the body in the proper proportion become very successful in the yoga process. These are some of the aspects of the analytical study of intelligence as described in both the Patanjali Yoga system and the Sankhya philosophy system of Kapila Deva in Srimad Bhagavatam. 31. Taijasan indriyan yeva kriya jnana vibhagashaha pranasya hi kriya shaktir buddhe vijnana shaktita. Egoism in the mode of passion produces two kinds of senses: the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses of action. The senses of action depend on the vital energy, and the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. Indriyani. What is this like this? Indriyani, taijasani eva, taijasa ahankaran jatani. Jnanendriyanam vaikarikatva shanka nivrityartham evakarah. विविधानाम् अपि इन्द्रियाणां तैजसत्वे हेतुः प्राणस्य इति यस्मात् प्राणस्य क्रियाशक्तिः यतः प्राणस्य तैजसत्वात् तत् क्रियाशक्तिमताम् अपि इन्द्रियाणां तैजसत्वम्. Prana, here vital energy is referred to as prana. Senses of action, karmendriyas require prana as its source of maintenance. Prana itself is coming from tejas ahankara. Therefore, the senses which attain their capacity to function from prana are said to be dependent on prana. Tatha buddher vijnana shaktita. Similarly, the senses for acquiring knowledge depend on intelligence. अतः बुद्धेः सविकल्पक ज्ञान वृत्तित्वेन रजः प्रचुरत्वात् तैजसत्वेन तदीय ज्ञान शक्तिमताम् इन्द्रियाणाम् अपि तैजसत्वम्. Buddhi generally leads to detailed knowledge, savikalpaka jnana, which is the opposite of generic knowledge, nirvikalpaka jnana. Okay, the textbook example is, let us say a child, for the first time in his life, he is shown a cow. So his father tells him that is a cow. So in his mind, an impression is now generated that a cow looks like this. It has this shape, it has this feature, it has that feature. And if he's already been shown some other, okay, so he's shown, okay, let's say that he's told this is a cow. That's a generic knowledge of cow, registered for the first time in this life, in that child's mind. Then later on, he sees other cows which don't 100% resemble this. The tail may be long, the horns may be of a different nature, and so on. So then his father says, this is also a cow. Then it registers in his mind. He uses his buddhi to understand, oh, see, so there are certain features which are same, certain features which are different, but overall it is within the category of cow. So buddhi brings about that way of analysis. And that is predominantly due to Rajoguna. It is due to Rajoguna that there is. It has been explained in the previous verses that mind is the product of ego and goodness, and that the function of the mind is acceptance and rejection according to desire. But here, intelligence is said to be the product of ego and passion. That is the distinction between mind and intelligence. Intelligence is a product of ego and passion. The desire to accept something and reject something is a very important factor of the mind. Since mind is a product of the mode of goodness, if it is fixed upon the Lord of the mind, Aniruddha, then the mind can be changed to Krishna consciousness. It is stated by Nor. Now can you hear me? We should just talk together. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
Your voice is breaking for me.
Yes, bro, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, let me read this. Very interesting it is. It is stated by Nautam Das Thakur that we always have desires. Desire cannot be stopped. But if we transfer our desires to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the perfection of life. Kama Krishna Karmarpane. As soon as the desire is transferred to lording it over material nature, it becomes contaminated by matter. Desire has to be purified. In the beginning, this purification process has to be carried out by the order of the spiritual master. Since the spiritual master knows how the disciples' desires can be transformed into Krishna consciousness. As far as intelligence is concerned, it is clearly stated here that it is a product of egoism and passion. By practice, one comes to the point of the mode of goodness, and by surrendering or fixing the mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes a very great personality or Mahatma. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said, Sa Mahatma Sudurlabhaha. Such a great soul is very rare. In this verse, it is clear that both kinds of senses, the senses for acquiring knowledge and the senses for action, are products of egoism in the mode of passion. And because the sense organs for activity and for acquiring knowledge require energy, the vital energy or life energy is also produced by egoism in the mode of passion. This is prana. We can therefore actually see that those who are very passionate can improve in material acquisition very quickly. It is recommended in the Vedic scriptures that if one wants to encourage a person in acquiring material possessions, one should also encourage him in sex life. We naturally find that those who are addicted to sex life are also materially advanced because sex life or passionate life is the impetus for the material advancement of civilization. For those who want to make material advancement, there is almost no existence. So, sorry, for those who want to make spiritual advancement, there is almost no existence of the mode of passion. Almost because initially one is allowed, but then afterwards one enters full celibacy. Only the mode of goodness is prominent. We find that those who engage in Krishna consciousness are materially poor. But one who has eyes can see who is the greater. Who is greater? Although he appears to be materially poor, a person in Krishna consciousness is not actually a poor man, but the person who has no taste for Krishna consciousness and appears to be very happy with material possessions is actually poor. Persons infatuated by material consciousness are very intelligent in discovering things for material comforts, but they have no access to soul and spiritual life. Therefore, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he has to come back to the platform of purified desire, the purified desire for devotional service, as stated in the Narada Pancharatra. Engagement in the service of the Lord, when the senses are purified in Krishna consciousness, is called pure devotion. 32. Tamasacha vikurvana Bhagavad Virya Chodita Shabdamatram Abhut Tasman Navashvotram to Shabdagam. When egoism in when egoism and ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. Yes.
Prabhu, if I am a materialist and I am satisfied with my material possessions, is there any chance that I will ever turn towards Krishna consciousness?
Generally, no. Krishna consciousness is for those who are interested in getting out of material existence. So if they are very happy in material existence, then there's no impetus for spiritual life, no?
So, in such cases, that you ensure that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's stages. So until and unless he gets Mahat Kripa, there is no hope that he will start his Krishna consciousness, Krishna
Yeah,
conscious life.
yeah. Yes, it's correct only.
He is stuck. There is no hope
As of now, there's
without
no.
that. Yeah. Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, we'll stop with that. We'll resume from Sarata Darshini in the next session. On Shadar Patar Vyashir Upasan Dikshira Chapatanam Pavan Vaishnavi Namo Namaha.
Prabhu,